Training camp underway, couple of days gone, and I'm just here to throw in my 2 cents. And being an observational kind of guy, I did observe some things about the Pittsburgh Steelers for training camp that I just like to display off of my first impression of training camp. What is going on, everybody? This is Steele's Sermon coming at you with another video on this Sunday. Happy Sunday, everybody. And do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, follow on Instagram, link in the box below. So pretty much the first week of training camp is done, and I'm just going to come on here and give some observations. You know, like I said, I'm an observational kind of guy. I'm a guy who likes to think outside the box every now and then, and I'm very opinionated if you can't tell. But from what I saw with training camp for the Pittsburgh Steelers for this week, a couple of names stood out to me, and a couple of things are not really concerning to me, but just something that I'd like to address. Because, you know, with training camp, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. When something goes great for your team, that could also cause a little bit of a concern for the other side. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But first of all, Broderick Jones coming on, and he participated in first-team reps with the offensive line in the second training camp for the Steelers this past Friday. And the rep to him, it kind of seemed to come as a surprise to him because, he pretty much said that he, doesn't really know what the coaches are going to throw at him. And, you know, that's fine. I mean, he's a rookie, so, you have to expect the unexpected a little bit. But, you know, it's good that he's getting first-team reps, and that's something that I want to see because we traded up to get this guy at 14 with New England, and he's going to be doing a lot of work and a lot of competition to beat out Dan Moore for that spot at left tackle, you know? So, I mean, you could be there in bed, pretty much, and they'll tell you to get out there and go to work. You never know what they're going to throw at you, and you never know what you're going to be prepared to do. So, going in with that mindset and have that ability is just really good on Broderick Jones' part. But I also give Dan Moore a lot of credit as well because he's been working with the offensive line coach. He's been kind of training himself to play the right side a little bit more because that sent the message to him saying that, hey, the Steelers drafted possibly my replacement. I better do something if I want to keep my job here. So I give Dan Moore a lot of credit for trying to keep his job in check, but I love the fact that Dan Moore got first-team reps, and I love the fact that he's in competition to be able to compete with Dan Moore, at least for the left side of the offensive line. I think Broderick Jones is a very hard worker, and it's going to be exciting to see him play. But with that being said, do I anticipate him to start at left tackle right away? That's up for the coaches to decide, and that's what training camp is for. So that's out of the way. But now I want to talk about a couple of players that stood out to me based on highlights and based on what the media has been saying. So with the first week, I mean, obviously the first couple of days you're not going to have the pads on, so you're not going to really see a full spectrum of it, but you have a good viewpoint, but no clear idea of what positions are going to be addressed when there's no physical contact out there with the pads being off. But when Tuesday comes, the pads are going to be on, so we're going to have more of an idea there. But I seen from highlights that Elijah Riley actually picked off a pass to end the first session when he was playing slot nickel. I think it was on Trubisky, so number one, that just tells you, hey, Mitch Trubisky hasn't changed much, and if he's getting picked off by Elijah Riley, but hey, good for Elijah Riley. He picked off a pass to end the first session. But then you got guys like Duke Dawson and Trey Norwood who are playing in the slots, and I love the confidence that they feel right there because Trey Norwood's been with us for a while. He's been with us 3 years now. He's very versatile, and he feels like he can utilize that to his ability to play like a corner and a linebacker, and that's the kind of needs that the Steelers are going to need big time going into this season, because as good as our defense is, we do have holes to address, and versatility is definitely a key contributor as to what a defense is going to have. I've always said that the best kind of ability is availability, and if Trey Norwood's available to play just as not even just a defensive back, but just a football player in general, I think that's going to go a long way for us. Now, the question is he the best option in the slot? That's up to be deciphered as well, because then you got Duke Dawson in first-team reps as well. He was the first one on the slot in the field, and he didn't come off the field unless Trey Norwood was coming on. And this was a guy who was in practice squad all year last year, who's also very versatile, who can also play a lot of positions on defense. So I think it's going to be an interesting decision between Duke Dawson and Trey Norwood right here to see who's going to get that slot option, because I think that can be a big bolster to the defense right there, because we need somebody who can possibly play in that free safety spot, or that strong safety spot, while Minka Fitzpatrick, we know, is being the ball hawk in the free safety spot. So I think either one of those can do, man. And you look at Duke Dawson or Trey. You look at Trey Norwood in general. I'm thinking of Trey Norwood. I'm sorry. You think of Trey Norwood in general. He's looking for a second chance in the league. He's been with us for a while. He may know the defensive system a little bit better than Duke Dawson does, because Duke Dawson's been on the practice squad all year last year. So I think that, honestly, looking at the highlights, I think that Norwood would honestly have the better chance. And the Steelers, they're all about giving second chances. I mean, we don't fire head coaches, for crying out loud. So those are just observations that I had right there. But let's not forget about Elijah Riley as well. I think he's very capable in coverage. He can have a lot of physicality coming off the edge. He's a natural blitzer, which is what the Steelers love to see moving forward, going back to the days of safety blitzes, which is why Paul Malu was so elite back in the day. And if he's trying to mold into what we want on the defense right there, I think that is going to be a big, valuable piece to the defensive backs. But then again, Trey Norwood, big sleeper as well. He's trying to carry that into the season and pretty much into the slot position to where he can be kind of like a Cam Sutton kind of player, which is still, in my opinion, our biggest loss of the offseason. Cam Sutton, I mean, the guy was really molding into a very good defensive back for us. At this point, I feel like we're just trying to find that replacement for Akella Witherspoon, which should really be a no-brainer. So, those are some really good defensive back observations that I observed from training camp. Of course, I mentioned Broderick Jones, but now let's talk about the offense a little bit more with Anthony McFarland. Anthony McFarland, if you want to talk about a guy who's pretty much going to be our RB3 in the backfield, because let's face it, we got Najee Harris. Jalen Warren came on the scene last year out of nowhere. And now Anthony McFarland's been posting some, headlines as well. Brain fart, sorry. But, yeah, I mean, if you look at this guy in general, I mean, he was used everywhere last year. And, again, versatility, which is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are all about right now, especially with the offseason that we've had. The guy can pass block. If you are an RB, if you're a running back and you can pass block, you're going to do wonders, especially with this offensive line. It's a great compliment, in my opinion, to Darnell Washington. Obviously, the guy can run, but he's got good catching ability, and he's been able to play special teams. You take a look at that Colts game that we had on Monday night last year, where he was just being used in pretty much every facet of that game to gash the Colts on the ground and to keep us in the game. Anthony McFarland was one of the biggest aspects of that game for us. And the best thing about it is that this is pretty much a win-win for us as far as Anthony McFarland goes if he continues this up in training camp. Because let's face it, what are the odds that the Steelers pull somebody out of training camp and they have like a season that Jaylen Warren had where he was racking up all them yards and he was, at one point considered to be the better option at RB1 than Najee Harris? Not likely. So, but, that does sound like a bad thing, but hey, we know what Anthony McFarland is capable of doing. And even if he can't do it, we can plug in a guy like Haggins or Huntley of the practice squad, who they have been known in the offensive system to kind of be like a good complement to Anthony McFarland as well. The point is, there's like no competition behind him to beat him out for that spot. And anyone from the practice squad can also replicate that. So in my eyes, this is a big win-win for us right here with Anthony McFarland. The very worst that can happen with him is that he just proves, hey, you know what? I should probably just be, an RB3. But if Najee Harris, God forbid, were to go down again, then we have a solid backup plan with Anthony McFarland. It just makes our run game that much deeper, And now I'm going to throw in a little bit of an overreaction to what I had with the first week of training camp, because you guys know me. I'm all about overreactions, okay? There was one highlight where Kenny Pickett busted out for a 45-yard run up the middle against our rush defense. And if you remember what I said back in the beginning of this video, it's that training camp is kind of like a double-edged sword. Well, here's where I'm going to get into that. Kenny Pickett bursts open for a 45-yard run, which sounds awesome. I mean, we know Kenny Pickett can use the legs. We know he can use it to get him out of a sticky situation, pick up yards like Big Ben was able to do. So that's awesome on his part. But here's the thing about it. We beefed up that defensive line in the draft and free agency, especially in the draft with Keanu Benton in particular, and TJ Watt coming back, and Cam Hayward and Alex Highsmith coming in to stop the run. So what are you guys doing allowing a second-year quarterback to burst open for a run like that, let alone for 45 yards? Where were the defensive backs on that play? Where was Benton there? Where was TJ Watt with the pressure? I mean, like I said, this is all just an overreaction for me. I don't think the defense is going to be like this every year. There are going to be times where the D-line and the run game does allow a big gash of yards. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But when you allow that to a quarterback, I mean, come on. Let alone in his second season. Come on, guys. That video I put out yesterday, it's all about physicality. The most physical team is going to win. And I don't like, part of me, I love seeing Kenny Pickett, get that big chunk of yards on the ground. That's awesome for him. But that kind of worries me on defense a little bit as well, because like I said, they just allowed that to a quarterback. It'd be one thing if it was a running back, but this guy is a quarterback. I mean, come on, guys. But anyway, let's take a look at some days for the second week of training camp. I'll have some videos out this week about it. And yeah, man, I mean, you can tell it's football season when I'm getting analytical about training camp. So there you go right there. Those are just my general observations for training camp. I can't wait for Tuesday in particular when the pads are going to come on and we're going to see, more highlights, and we're going to see more of a defined team right here in training camp. But let me know what you think down in the comments below about Steelers training camp for week 1. This is Steel Sermon checking on out for the day. Let's go Steelers, baby.